Hello everyone, this is Harshit from Cashfree team, and today we will be talking about how to integrate Cashfree Checkout SDK into your application and start collecting payments from your customers. Firstly, we need to get the API keys which can be generated from the merchant dashboard. You can log in with the email ID and password if you have an account already, or you can create one by clicking on the sign up button above. Once you have the credentials set, you can simply log in. As soon as you log in, here we can find an option switch to test. Currently we are developing our checkout using a test environment, so we'll click on switch to test and then developers and then API keys to view the API keys in the test environment. It has two parameters, X client ID and X client secret, which will be unique for every merchant. You can copy these credentials if they are already generated by you, or you can generate one by clicking on the generate API keys button above. You can simply click on view API keys in order to list the app ID and secret key, which can be used in further purposes. If you have these generated, you are good to go. Once you get the API keys, you can create the order using the create order API, which takes X client ID, X client secret and X API version in the headers, and in the body it will take order amount, order currency, customer details and order meta information. Order meta will have return URL and notify URL. Return URL is the URL where the customer is redirected upon successful or failure transaction. Notify URL is the webhook which will be triggered on how it is configured in the merchant dashboard. Currently, we will create one webhook and add it as a notify URL. For that, I am using a site called webhook.site which creates an instant webhook. I am copying my webhook. Go into the merchant dashboard, click on developers, click on webhooks, click on add webhook point and add the webhook which you want to add. Click on test and select the API version and click on next. Here you need to select the events for which the webhook should be triggered. Currently I will only add the success payment webhook, and then I'll add webhook. This will add the webhook for all my orders and will be triggered upon successful payment. You can see the webhooks information in the logs by clicking on the respective webhook, and then it will contain all the payload header information in which you can confirm your order by checking the payment status variable. Once you have the notify URL, you can simply create the order which gives the details in the response, and we need payment session ID in order to call our SDK. In order to integrate the Cashfree SDK, I made a demo project which has 3 files for HTML, CSS and JS purpose. We will be integrating the SDK in the cache.js file, and my HTML page has an input field with 2 buttons, where the input field is used to collect the payment session ID and the buttons are used to render the checkout page. Once we'll be following this documentation to initialize our Cashfree SDK. Firstly, in order to initialize and integrate our SDK, we need to have this CDN URL in our project HTML file. Once this is imported, we need to initialize the variable using the Cashfree function, which takes mode as sandbox or production. Sandbox is used for test environment and production is used for the production mode. So the initialization and the integration is done. So we need to add the feature for the payment buttons, which will be done using the method cache.checkout, which takes 3 parameters: payment session ID, return URL and the redirect target. Return URL is the URL where the customer is redirected after a successful or failure payment. Redirect target can have 5 values such as blank, self, parent, top, frame. Blank will be opening our checkout page inside a new window. Self will be opening in the same frame. Parent will be opening it in the payment frame. Top will be opening in the full body of the window, and frame name will open in the iframe given. In the predefined HTML page, we have 2 buttons, one for redirect flow, which opens the checkout page in a new tab, and one for iframe flow, which opens the checkout page inside the iframe. For the iframe flow, I created an iframe inside the div which has the name drop iframe. I have 2 buttons, one for the new tab rendering and one for the iframe rendering. which has IDs redirect button and drop button. Now we'll configure the JS part for it. So we'll add an event listener for the buttons using the add event listener, and I have the checkout options such as payment session ID, which I will be getting from the input value, return URL, which is already configured in the order creation part, and the redirect target will be blank so that the checkout will be opened in a new page. And we'll be passing this checkout option to the cashier.checkout function, which takes these parameters and opens our checkout page in a new tab. Similarly, we should do it for the iframe wala flow. In iframe flow, the ID will be drop button, and then the redirect target should be the name of the iframe. That's it. And we need to pass this checkout options to the cashier.checkout function so that it will be rendered inside an iframe. That's the integration we need to do in order to integrate the cashier checkout SDK. Now we'll test the application. So for that, I'll create an order. I'll have the payment session ID. I'll go to my HTML page. I'll have the payment session ID entered. I'll render the iframe. That will render the checkout page inside an iframe where the customer can pay in the same page itself. And the other flow was to redirect to a new tab where the customer will be redirected to a new page where he can do the payment there. Currently, we will do a successful transaction using test wallet. I'll click on simulate success. Once the transaction is successful at the customer end, he will be redirected to the merchant return URL where the merchant can verify the order by calling the get order API. Get order API requires the order ID which will be passed in the return URL. He can take that order ID and call the get order API, where in the response he will be having a parameter called order status that is paid in this case. That means the customer has successfully paid. The merchant can also rely on the webhook which he configured during the create order as a notify URL. In our case, the webhook will be notified as we configure this webhook for successful payments in the merchant dashboard. The merchant can either choose redirect flow or the iframe flow based on his requirement.